Welcome to Unit 6, Part 5. We're going to talk about a rhombus and a square. And so some definitions here. A rhombus is a parallelogram with all the sides congruent. And then a square is a parallelogram with all sides and all angles congruent. So think, if you take a rhombus, and more specifically, all angles are 90 degrees. If you take a rhombus and combine a rectangle and a rhombus, combine them, you get a square. So that's basically what a square is. It's a combination of a rhombus and a rectangle. So if a parallelogram is a rhombus, then its diagonals are perpendicular. So that's one way to know that as a parallelogram is a rhombus if the diagonals are perpendicular to each other, meaning the diagonals form right angles. If a parallelogram is a rhombus, then each diagonal bisects a pair of opposite angles. So that means that these angles are equal. So the opposite angles are bisected by the diagonals. So the diagonals of a rhombus, W, X, Y, Z, intersect at V. So W, X, Y, Z intersect at V. If WZX, so WZX is 39.5, then find ZYX. So find this whole angle. Well, if this is 39.5, then this is 39.5 as well. And 39.5 plus 39.5 gives you 79 degrees. So basically this whole angle here, let me erase this. This whole angle is 79 degrees. And these are supplementary. So 180 minus 79 is equal to 101 degrees. So that is the measure of angle WZYX. So here it says WX equals 8x minus 5. So 8x minus 5 for WX. WZ is 6x plus 3. Find x. Well, you know all sides are equal, so that means 8x minus 5 must equal 6x plus 3. Subtract 6x. Then you want to add 5. So you get 2x equals 8. So x is equal to 4. ABCD is a rhombus. ABCD is a rhombus. Find the measure of angle CBD if ABC is 126. Well, CBD would be half of it, so half of 126 is equal to half of 126 is equal to 63 degrees. All right. Oh, sorry. So this is 63 here. 63 and 63. So it wants to find CDB here. So if we know that's 63, yeah, it's 63, because these would all be the same. Because remember, opposite angles in a parallelogram are the same. So it'd be 63 and 63. All right, so BC is 4x minus 5. CD is also 2x plus 7. And remember, all sides are equal, so 4x minus 5 equals 2x plus 7. And then you add 5. So 2x equals 12, x equals 6. So the next page gives you the chart of parallelograms. So parallelograms is basically the main category. Parallelograms have opposite sides that are parallel. And then parallelograms, there's types of parallelograms. There's a rectangle, which has 4 right angles. There's a rhombus, which has 4 congruent sides. And the combination of a rectangle and a rhombus is a square that has 4 congruent sides and 4 right angles. So conditions for rhombus and square. If the diagonals of a parallelogram are perpendicular, then the parallelogram is a rhombus. If one diagonal of a parallelogram bisects a pair of opposite angles, then the parallelogram is a rhombus. So those are 2 ways to know it's a rhombus. Also, if consecutive pairs of sides of a parallelogram are congruent, it's also a rhombus. Because remember, in other parallelograms, opposite sides are congruent, but a rhombus, since all 4 sides are congruent, that means if consecutive sides of a parallelogram are congruent, then it has to be a rhombus as well. And if a quadrilateral is both a rectangle and a rhombus, then it is a square. So, the question here says, is there enough information given to prove that ABCD is a rhombus? Explain. Well, it says given ABCD is a parallelogram and AD is congruent to DC. And the answer to that question is yes, there's enough information because you're given ABCD is a parallelogram and consecutive sides are congruent. So therefore, ABCD is a rhombus. All right, so then next one, Jason has a shape he knows to be a parallelogram and all 4 sides are congruent. Which information does he need to know to determine whether it is also a square? The diagonals bisect a pair of opposite angles. No, that just means it's a rhombus. Diagonals bisect each other. That just means it's a parallelogram. Diagonals are perpendicular. That just means it's a rhombus. But diagonals congruent, that means it's a rectangle as well. So if it's a rectangle and a rhombus, then it would be a square. LMNO is a rhombus. Find x and y. Well, remember, in a rhombus, the diagonals bisect the pair of opposite angles. So 3x plus 12 is equal to 5x minus 2. So you get 2x and then plus 2, so 14. So x is equal to 7. And then remember, diagonals are perpendicular, so that means 8y minus x is equal to 90. And then y is equal to 12. All right, so QRST is a square. So that means it has 4 right angles and congruent sides. So if QR is 5W plus 4 and RS is 2 times 4W minus 7, it wants to find W, so that you just set those equal to each other. So it's 8W minus 14. So 18 equals 3W, and W is going to equal 6. QU, if QS is 16T minus 14, and QU is 6T plus 11, well, remember, the diagonals bisected, so 2 times 6T plus 11 is equal to 16T minus 14, the whole thing. So then you subtract the 12t and add the 14. So 4t equals 36. So that means t equals 9. So to find QU, it's 6 times 9 plus 11. So 54 plus 11 is 65. All right, then last it says find the n if the measure angle TQR is 8n plus 8. Well, that's also a right angle, so 8n plus 8 equals 90. 8n equals 82. So when you divide by 8, you get n equals 10.25. All right, so last here, it says determine whether ABCD is a rhombus, rectangle, or a square. Determine all that apply. Well, first thing I would do is I would graph it so I know what it looks like. So here's A. B is -1, 3. C is 3, 2. And D is 2, -2. All right, so there's what it looks like. So now what I would do is I'd find the slopes. Finding slopes is a lot quicker than using the lengths. So first I find the slopes. So AB, so the slope is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So it's going to be 4 over 1, which is 4. And I'd also want to find the slope of CD, because remember I want to know that opposite sides are parallel for it to be a parallelogram. So -2 minus 2 and 2 minus 3. So -4 over -1 is also 4. So right now I know AB is parallel to CD. So let's see if BC is parallel to AD. So BC is 2 minus 3 over 3 minus -1. So it's -1/4. And then AD is also -2 minus -1 over 2 minus -2. So it's -1/4. So from that, we know it's a parallelogram since opposite sides are parallel. And since the consecutive slopes are perpendicular, we know it's a rectangle. All right, because that means there's right angles here and here, since the consecutive slopes are perpendicular. So now to determine if it's a rhombus, we find if the diagonals are perpendicular. So we got to find the slopes of the diagonals. So to find the slopes of the diagonals, like BD, we go -2 minus 3 over 2 minus -1. And that's -5/3. And then the slope of AC, because that's the other diagonal. So AC is 2 minus -1 over 3 minus -2. So it's 3/5. And notice these are perpendicular. So that means it is a rhombus, since the diagonals are perpendicular. And since it's a rectangle and a rhombus, it is a square. So there you go. So it's all of them here. All right. So that concludes Unit 6, Part 5. And we'll start talking about next trapezoids and kites in Unit 6, Part 6. Have a good evening.